Today, we are talking about how to sell smart assets that boost your med spa's valuation. So, before we dive in, I want to start with the truth that most med spa owners never hear until it's too late. Most med spa owners believe their value is in their equipment, maybe their brand, or even their revenue. But buyers disagree, and that disconnect cost owners millions at exit. Owners often say, "Look at everything I've invested in." Buyers ask, "Which of these are really income producing assets?" That difference alone can change the value of a business overnight. So, what owners often mistake for value is really a sunk cost. Buyers don't reward what you paid for, they reward what performs. An asset only matters if it can generate income without constant owner involvement. I've sat on calls where owners passionately walk buyers through every device and every upgrade, and the buyer barely reacts. Not because they don't respect the effort, but because effort is not an asset. Buyers are trained to separate the emotional investment from financial value. So if you've ever thought, "I've invested so much into this business, it has to be worth a lot," this conversation is for you. Today's not about selling your business tomorrow. It's about understanding how buyers actually define assets. So every decision you make from this point forward builds value instead of just building stress, complexity, and exhaustion. Selling smart doesn't start when you're burned out, doesn't start when you're desperate for an exit. It starts when you clearly understand what actually creates value. Value does not equal effort, and value does not equal ownership. Value equals transferable, predictable income, producing assets. So, how do buyers actually look at your business? So, here's the first major mindset I need you to make. Please understand, buyers do not value med spas the way owners do, because buyers are not emotionally attached to what you've built. Owners focus on devices they've purchased, build outs they've invested in, revenue milestones, and how busy their clinic feels, how much they personally do. But buyers, they focus on cash flow, margin, risk, repeatability, and how many true assets exist without the owner. Your med spa is not a passion project. It's not a reflection of your identity. It's not an equipment showroom. It is a collection of assets. And some of those assets are far more valuable than others. Buyers mentally separate emotional effort from economic value very quickly. And what feels important to you may be irrelevant to them. Buyers are constantly asking themselves, if I buy this business, what am I actually buying? They want assets that work, not assets that need rescuing. And anything that requires the owner's daily presence is not viewed as an asset. It's viewed as a risk. I worked with an owner who told me no one could run this place like I do. And from an owner's perspective, that felt like pride. But from a buyer's perspective, that was a red flag. The core question every buyer is asking in this: which of these assets can produce income reliably and without the owner being involved day to day? If you think about this and the honest answer today is not many, that doesn't mean you failed. It simply means you know now exactly where you need to focus. Next, let's talk about EBITDA. It is one of the most misunderstood, most valuable assets in your business. So, EBITDA, what does it stand for? Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. But in short, it's your profit. Think about EBITDA differently. It's not just a number on a report. EBITDA is an income producing asset. It presents the cash flow your business can generate, independent of you. EBITDA is the asset buyers are truly purchasing. It reflects how well your assets work together, shows whether your business produces income by design or by hustle. EBITDA tells a buyer how efficient your operation is, how predictable your income is, and how risky or safe the investment will be. Buyers don't buy revenue. Revenue shows activity and volume. Buyers buy EBITDA because EBITDA shows quality of earnings. It answers the question, how much money does this business reliably produce? High quality earnings are far more valuable than high volume revenue. You can own $1 million practice with weak EBITDA and it's not attractive. If you own a smaller practice with strong EBITDA, it becomes a really premium asset. So, how does EBITDA build assets. They don't just grow by accident. EBITDA increases when we watch our labor and it's efficient and it aligns with demand. When providers are fully utilized, they're not just booked. Rebooking is happening consistently and intentionally. Retail packages are integrated into all patient care. There's systems in place that reduce waste, errors, and rework, and the owner's no longer the operational safety net. Each one of these is an asset decision, not a marketing decision. EBITDA grows when assets work together instead of independently. The strong EBITDA comes from simplicity, not constant expansion. EBITDA is built through discipline, not excitement. It improves when systems replace guesswork. It grows when accountability replaces heroics. I once worked with a clinic that added 2 new devices in 1 year, but EBITDA went down. And why? Because staffing, utilization, and systems were never caught up. They added equipment, not assets. EBITDA does not increase just because you buy more things, add more services, or even work long hours. EBITDA is built by strengthening the assets, not adding complexity. So if EBITDA still feels unclear to you, drop an exit in the chat and I will share our checklist that shows how owners turn their business into a true 5x valuation asset. So, what do buyers look at? If I'm telling you what we don't look at, what do they look at? When buyers evaluate your bed spa, they don't see services, they see assets. Every asset gets sorted into 3 buckets. The first is that cash flow assets, that EBITDA we were just talking about. That is your highest value. They're looking for stable margins, consistent monthly performance, revenue that doesn't spike and crash. These assets tell buyers the business is dependable. Boring, predictable cash flow is extremely valuable. Consistency lowers risk, and risk directly affects valuation. Cash flow assets are what buyers build their offers around. The strong and more predictable these assets are, the higher the multiple. Without strong cash flow assets and clean numbers, nothing else matters. The second bucket, operational and those intangible assets. Now, this is where valuation multiples are created. These assets include systems, SOPs, memberships, and reoccurring revenue models, layers of leadership well beyond the owner, clean, reliable financials, KPI that's visible and the team is held accountable for. These assets protect your cash flow. These allow the business to scale without chaos. They ensure performance continues even when people change. Operational assets make cash flow durable, and these reduce reliance on any single person, aka the owner, and they turn effort into structure. So finally, the third bucket, those are your tangible assets. That's actually your lowest impact. This is where your devices come in, the equipment, the build out. These are supporting assets, not primary valuation drivers, unless they're clearly improve your EBITDA. So tangible assets without a utilization, they're neutral, negative, and even can be a liability. Buyers don't discount. They want to see what performs. So here's the rule buyers will live by. If it doesn't increase EBITDA, it's not a core asset. In simple terms, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. So what do we do? What are these intangible assets? How can we get this premium? Let's slow down and take a minute because this is where smart owners separate themselves. Buyers pay more for these intangible assets because they reduce dependency on the owner. The most valuable asset includes labor efficiency, every role producing at least 3 to 5 times its cost. Recurring revenue. We have memberships in place, packages, also, documented systems. It's not just living in the owner's head. The systems are in place for the team to follow. There's layers of leadership. The books are clean and KPIs are tracked, reviewed, and acted on. These assets reduce uncertainty. Uncertainty creates risk. Risk lowers your valuation. So these intangible assets create confidence for your buyers. Confidence increases offers. The more confidence you create, the more leverage you have. A business that runs without the owner becomes transferable. Transferability equals valuation, and the fewer questions a buyer has, the higher the multiple. So let's talk about the most misunderstood category of assets, devices. Owners love devices because they feel tangible and impressive. Buyers are cautious because devices can easily become liabilities. Here's why. Your device depreciates quickly. Many of them are leased or financed. The technology's always evolving. Utilization can be inconsistent, and staffing and marketing are frequently underdeveloped. A device sitting idle doesn't just fail to add value, it creates drag. It ties up capital, increases overhead, and adds operational complexity. Buyers notice this immediately. Idle equipment is not neutral. It actively harms your valuation. It signals poor planning and weak asset management. Buyers factor this risk directly into their offer. So I once reviewed a practice with over 500,000 in devices and less than 40% utilization. So on paper, it potentially looked impressive, but in reality, it lowered valuation because it increased risk. Here's the hard truth. A $200,000 device with no utilization is not an asset. It's a liability. Buyers don't ask, what do you own? They ask which assets reliably produce cash flow without the owner's participation. So, what do we do with this device? When does it become an actual asset? So, when tangible assets actually become real assets, it's because we're using them effectively. So, a device becomes a real asset when we can show return on investment. It's documented, it's repeatable. We're driving those packages. You can see where it's driving reoccurring revenue. Patients are coming in for their maintenance. We are marketing it correctly. It's going to improve your EBITDA because the big selling point, how we ever got roped into buying these devices, is because we can see the amazing outcome and the low COGS, which we all love to see. And we know that's going to increase our profit margin. So they can be very, very beneficial if used correctly. Next, we want to make sure you're fully staffed. Are you scheduling it properly? We should not be giving providers an extra 45 minutes to flip their room. We want to make sure these devices are booked consistently and efficiently. We want to make sure it's marketed intentionally. Does everyone know what your device is? Do they know what it does? I can assure you, most patients have no idea the name of most devices. They know outcomes, they know what they're looking for, but if we're marketing it correctly, we're giving them all that information so that we can turn this tangible device into a true asset. And then finally, it always comes back to we cannot be dependent on the owner. The owner can't be the only one that can use the device. So we want to make sure throughout the clinic, everyone is trained. We can schedule it. It is scheduled efficiently, and we're driving that revenue. That is what makes a system work efficiently. That is what makes a device now an asset. Ownership is passive. Just owning that device, it doesn't do anything for you. Execution, that is active, and that is what buyers pay for. They pay for what works. Now, there are some actual silent valuation killers. So we're talking assets, we're talking about what they want to buy. What about the assets that buyers discount? So let's talk about what happens when they quietly discount, or even if they never say it out loud during the conversation. There are certain assets that will absolutely kill your deal or lower your valuation. Number one, it's always going to come back to owners. Owners acting as the top producer. Cannot have that. High labor with no accountability. Revenue without margin. Devices collecting dust and no systems to replace the owner. Buyers rarely argue about these. They simply lower the multiple or they walk away entirely. And what feels manageable to an owner often feels risky to a buyer. Every discounted asset compounds risk, and every risk reduces your valuation. Buyers don't negotiate risk, they just price it. So here's a reflection question I want you to sit with. Which of your current assets would a buyer actually discount today? And if you want help identifying that clearly, drop an exit in the chat and I will send you our valuation readiness checklist. You can also DM us directly if you're on IG with exit, and we'll do that as well. So, what do we do? What is the right way? So, the correct order to build assets is starting with labor efficiency utilization. We have to build from the basics. It's not that medspa owners lack assets. It's just they build them in the wrong order. They want to start with devices, expansions, but we got to start with the basics. Labor, reoccurring revenue models, systems, SOPs. leadership in place well beyond the owner, KPIs that are visible, targeting, talked about within the clinic. And then, and only then, the final piece is your devices and the possible expansion. When assets are built in this order, the valuation becomes predictable. The business becomes easier to manage and easier to sell. When they aren't risk compounded, when they are, the risk compounds and buyers notice that. This order protects your cash flow first, then it protects continuity, and then it supports growth. So we have the systems, we're working it out, and then we bring in devices, and then we do the expansion. So I want to bring this home. Selling smart is not about owning more. It's about owning the right assets. You don't just sell your med spa for what you own. You sell it for the assets that it produces without you. Buyers don't reward effort. They reward structure. They don't reward hustle. They reward predictability, and they don't reward ownership. They don't care about the devices. They reward transferable income producing assets. So if selling feels far away, that's actually your advantage because the best time to build assets is before you need to exit. So if you want our checklist that outlines the assets buyers actually value, what increases your multiple, what reduces that risk, and how owners position for a true 5x valuation, drop an X in the chat and we will send it to you. Smart exits aren't lucky, they're built asset by asset intentionally. I did go a little quicker than typical today, so I definitely have time for some questions. I do want to make a point out to all of our team on, if you're on Instagram, you can send exit. We automatically have your information. We know exactly where to send it. If you are sending, if you would like it and you're in our Zoom link and you're putting exit in our chat, if you could also put your email address in there, that would expedite the process and we can get that document to you much, much faster. So now I would like to open it up for any questions. Let me bring my chat open and say hi to a few people. So we have Jan, we have Renova Aesthetics. Thank you for joining. Infinite Beauty, Skin Detective. Appreciate you all being on the call today. Anybody that does put exit, please again, put your email. That will make it a lot quicker for us. Alrighty, so question in, if I am still the top producer, how do I start removing myself without hurting revenue? That is a great question. And this is one of the most common and most important questions that owners ask. The goal is not to remove yourself overnight. The goal is to turn you from the primary income source into a system supported asset. And you do that by gradually shifting your role from revenue producer to revenue multiplier. Now, what does that mean? Documenting how you consult and sell, training your providers to replicate your outcomes, standardizing treatment plans and pricing, putting KPIs around performance so revenue isn't personality driven. I've worked with owners who were absolutely terrified to step back, and within months, revenue actually increased because the business stopped bottlenecking through one person. And from a buyer's perspective, the less revenue that's dependent on you, the more valuable your business becomes. Owner dependency is impressive to buyers. It is risky. Reducing that risk is one of the fastest ways to increase your valuation. So thanks. It's a great question. What else do we have here? Fastest way to improve EBITDA if I want to be exit ready in the next 12 to 24 months. Another great question. The fastest way is not by adding more. It's by optimizing what you already have. So again, we really want to dial in that EBITDA. EBITDA is what the top tier buyers are looking at. So labor efficiency, making sure each one of your team members and your roles produce 3 to 5 times its cost. Are they scheduled efficiently? Are there comp models in alignment? Next is utilization. Fill in those gaps. We need to make sure that everybody's schedule is maximized. Recurring revenue. If you don't have a membership in place, get those memberships in place. And then packages. I know if you're working with us, we're talking comprehensive treatment plans, we're talking packages. That is how you can show reoccurring revenue and stabilize that cash flow. Most owners try to grow their EBITDA by adding services, devices, and that can increase complexity and cost. Buyers care about margin, predictability, not how many offerings that you have. So if you focus on tightening systems, improving your rebooking, increasing average spend per visit, reducing owner involvement, your EBITDA can significantly improve in a very short window. And that is what buyers want to see, an upward trend, predictable EBITDA, and that's going to tie in strong to your assets. Um, okay. And again, exit in the chat or your email for us to send that document. Can you comment on age of owner, founder, and how long you need to stay? Um, Age of owner would doesn't really matter. It's really going to be again about the structure of the business. And then when you create your exit plan to leave, you want to clearly outline that. You want to, some will just walk away. Like I'm walking away from the business. Here you go. Here are the keys. Others will transition out. So do make sure that if you are going to either provide guidance, provide support, you want to make sure that you definitely have that outlined in your agreement so you don't end up spinning your wheels for a year, 2 years, helping the clinic. So recommend putting it into your agreement, how long you're going to have it be in place during that transition. And then that will clearly align. Don't give yourself more than 6 months unless you're really wanting them to continue paying you. Usually a 6 month transition, short answer would be the best way to put that in there. But age of the owner doesn't matter. It's the existence of the business. You want to have at least a year to 2 years, clean data, clean numbers. But the actual, age of the business doesn't really factor in too much. How long do all these systems need to be in place prior to listing? So yeah, you want to show it significant for at least a year, 6 months to a year. That the longer you can wait, the better. Couldn't you go sell in 6 months when you get all these systems in place? Absolutely. Would you get a higher valuation if you waited to a year so that you could show more time? Absolutely. So it's really about how much of a rush that you're in. But if you have the ability to give yourself time, plan for that year, give yourself a full year. And if your systems aren't in place and it's going to take a lot of cleanup, you need to get it to that nice level, get the systems in place, make sure you have clean data, clean reporting, and then again, full year of showing that consistently and obviously watching that revenue grow in as much as possible. If I learned anything else. Okay, how do I know which of my current assets are actually increasing my valuation versus just keeping the business running? So, that's a very, very smart question, but we want to make sure that we don't just one little answer is going to fix everything. The easiest way to tell if one simple thing is working is just make sure, does your asset increase in EBITDA? Simple question. If it is increasing EBITDA without me being involved, then yes, yes, it's a value. If the answer is no, it's either neutral or it's a risk. So again, that's really dialing in your devices. Those type of situations when it's tangible, those are what you can actually execute and show that increased EBITDA. But if not, you want to dial into those intangibles, clean up your efficiency, clean up those systems. That's how you're going to see the valuation, increase and not sit there idly. And I think I got them all. Let me scroll. Yes, perfect. So thanks everyone for joining. I do see a lot of exits in the chat, so that is great. Again, if you have an opportunity, put your email in it. We'll get it to you a lot faster if you can drop that email if you do have the ability and you are in Zoom. But thanks everyone for joining today. We will get that checklist to you so you can see how to maximize and prepare to sell to get that 5 times valuation. So appreciate everyone's time today and hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you back next Wednesday.